Good morning, it's Thursday morning and you're very welcome to our thought for today. This week we're going through Mark chapter 2 verses 13 to 17. I keep on saying Matthew because Matthew is actually the focus of who we're looking at this week. Obviously we're looking at what Jesus did. Jesus came along the beach one day, intentionally teaching the crowd, all the crowd as Mark said. And as he comes along the beach, he is making, if you like, a beeline towards a certain person. Because at the start of that day, he had one person in mind, and that person was Matthew or Levi. The term is interchangeable, so if you hear me saying one or the other, one name was used by one group of people, the other name by somebody else. Friends and family might have called him Levi, maybe the folk he worked for, maybe called him Matthew or vice versa, we're not sure. But we do believe that the name Matthew and Levi are interchangeable. So if you hear me using one or the other, you know who I'm talking about. So Jesus made a target for himself. And that target was Levi. And he went towards him. He used two words, follow me. And for some reason, Levi decided he couldn't resist that call. He had to get up and follow Jesus. Now, I don't know whether he gathered all his money together or he walked off and left it and left a bit of a fuss going on the beach or people scrambling for the coins or whatever. But it was very instantaneous. There was a sense of, I have to leave all, I have to go and follow Jesus. And yesterday we thought about the compulsion we have whenever Jesus says to us, leave everything and follow me. And how we need to then become full-time disciples, intentional disciples of an intentional Lord who came and called us and searched us out. This morning, I want to think a little bit more about this character, Levi. Sometimes people say to me, and it has happened, I could never become a Christian because there's too much in my past that is holding me back, or I'm not good enough, or it's just not the sort of person I would be, and they can't imagine themselves as being a Christian, and yet sometimes they are the very people that Jesus calls. And in this one, this person, Levi, well, he had it all against him. Levi was, in his background, he would have been a Jew. Okay, the name Levi obviously is a Jewish name. So he would have been brought up a Jew. He would have known the Jewish background. But at some point, someone offered him a job that meant that he, in a sense, had to give up being a Jew. He had to give up a lot of the things that he would have enjoyed as a Jew. And to do that, he then became an employee, if you like, of the Roman engine, the Roman military, the Roman oppression in the country. So he went from being somebody who would have been brought up understanding God's word to somebody who had sort of set God's word aside, but turned his heart towards the opportunity of earning some money. Now, he might have got a little bit of money from the Romans for doing this tax collecting for them. But most of his money would have been got by adding a little bit extra on to whatever tax he charged people. So he was allowed by the Romans to ask a little bit extra, not too much so that the people would be put off, etc., but enough so that he would be looked after well enough. Now, this wasn't a secret. Everyone knew it. The Jewish people knew it. They knew that whatever Levi was asking of them, he was getting some of their money for himself so that he then could give the rest of the money to the Romans. He was somebody who was despised by his own people. He was, I suppose, tolerated by the Romans. They weren't really that fussed about him. He was just doing a job. They didn't care whether his own people liked him or not. They just wanted him to tax and to get the money off the Jewish people to pass on to them. They weren't interested in him as a person. His own Jewish background, those people hated him because of what he was doing to them. He had almost traitored himself. He was going against his own person, his own history, his own background, his own people, just to get a bit of money at the expense of the Romans. So he had really got enemies, if you like, or not. He certainly didn't have friends on either side, but his own people didn't like him. And because he was doing this work, let me just read for you a few of the things that happened to him because of that. He wasn't considered a real Jew. And because he wasn't considered a real Jew, he was disqualified as a judge or even as a witness in court. So anything he said in court, nobody cared about. You can't be a witness in court because of who you are, because you're working for the Romans. We don't want you to be a witness in court. He also was expelled from the synagogue. He wasn't allowed to do anything in the synagogue. When they met to read God's word and to pray, he wasn't allowed to be in there. Even though he came from a Jewish background, he had disqualified himself because of what he was doing with the Romans. More than that, he was a cause of disgrace to his family. His family would have hated him for doing what he was doing. They would have wanted him to stop it. They would have pleaded with him, find yourself a better job. Come away from that work. We can't have anything to do with you. You're taxing us. You're hurting us. You're making our life a misery because of what you're doing. So it's a strange job. Nobody in his background, nobody from his Jewish side wanted anything to do with him. And more than that, the Romans couldn't care less for him. So he was almost like this little island all on his own. But in this little island, he was stockpiling his money. He had forsaken his history just to get what he wanted out of life. It's incredible when you think about it. This is a crazy story, but it shows you that Jesus saw in Levi, in Matthew, something that he needed in his disciples. And the moment he called him, all that fell away. His whole past fell away, and he became someone who, in the hands of Christ, did incredible things. And what an amazing gospel we have. So, never ever think you're beyond the reach of Christ. Never ever think that somehow your past disqualifies you. Never ever think that because of where you come from, you have no opportunity in the future with the Lord. He's looking for people just like you and me. Thanks for being with us today. See you tomorrow. God bless.